This is the To the Brim podcast, where we openly discuss all things mental health, including eating disorders, anxiety, depression, and more.
I'm Lauren, a licensed clinical social worker who specializes in anxiety, depression, OCD, and other mental health diagnoses.
And I'm Brandy, a registered dietitian who specializes in eating disorders and body image disturbance.
As healthcare providers, we know you can't pour from an empty cup.
We hope to shine a light on mental health issues in an authentic and accessible way and help you fill your mental health cup with knowledge, clarity, and validation.
This podcast is for information and educational purposes only and is not a substitute for medical or mental health advice.
We're excited to help you fill your cup so that you can take on life one sip at a time. Hey, welcome back. It's Brandy and Lauren, and we've got a special guest today with us.
Ellie.
Miss Ellie.
No longer pregnant, but if you hear cries, you know what's up.
That's why, yes. And today we have a different sort of episode for you today versus talking about one specific topic. We're actually going to be asking each other questions about different topics that we've had. Lauren's going to ask me questions about eating disorders. I'm going to ask her questions about different mental health issues. And yeah, we'll just see where the conversation takes us. But we're going to check in first. And Lauren, why don't you go ahead?
Yep. I've got my iced coffee. I made myself a white mocha today because I can have coffee, woohoo! And in abundance if I choose. But I'm feeling a little tired today. Baby lets me sleep pretty good through the night, but on still those days, I'm very sleepy. So we're giving ourselves a little bit of a caffeine boost before having all of the conversations. But if my mouth or brain kicks in, y'all know what's going on. So Brandy, how are you landing?
I am landing pretty good today. I feel pretty regulated and just excited to see my little niece because it's been a few weeks. I've actually got to
she's like
put
almost
hands
a
on
month
her.
old now.
Yeah, a whole month old. Sweetest. So I'm checking in, feeling pretty good. I got some chores out of the way, so that also feels good before the potential snow comes and hits us this weekend. So just feeling good. And I am checking in with my coffee that's very similar to Lauren's, except it's hot because it's cold outside. And she's crazy for wanting cold coffee.
When you carry a baby all day long, you get hot, man. I needed something cold.
That's true. Actually, I was holding her for a while earlier in my right arm, and it's actually feeling kind of sore. And I
don't doubt that.
Wow, am I going to be sore tomorrow from holding a baby for a couple hours?
Man, you should hold her in your other arm so it evens out.
Yeah, then I'll be super strong. Actually, I remember being strong when I had, my own baby to cart around for at least 2 years. And I could mom strength or something like that. Yeah, they do. And I could totally kill somebody's wrestle. Yeah. Totally. Yes.
Well, cool. Okay, well, did you get to complete how you were landing? Okay, I just didn't want to cut you off too soon. Let's see our client scenarios. We can dive right in. Would you like to set up the first scenario?
Sure.
Would you like me to?
Yeah, I can do the first one and then we can switch back and forth here.
Sure.
All right, so my first scenario is related to OCD, and I have had quite a number of clients, of course, in the eating disorder world that become obsessed with calories or count grams of sugar, things like that, the minutes of exercise that they've had to do in a day. And for some, it's easy for them. I shouldn't say easy, but it's not as difficult if I suggest hey, how about we stop looking at labels or we stop counting calories? How about we stop tracking the number of minutes of exercise and just move based on what your body's feeling like? And for others, they're just wow, if I do that, something bad is going to happen. And I don't know what it is, but it feels so attached to my person and my value that I can't stop. And if you ask me to stop, that's the end of the world. I won't be able to stop. Yeah. And so I'm seeing how it's overlapping with an OCD diagnosis in some ways. And I've had some patients actually seek psychiatry or things like that to try and get help, a diagnosis of OCD. But I was looking for your thoughts on those kind of cases.
As I'm trying to multitask, so
yes.
Sorry. Yes, so that definitely does sound like OCD, and Psychiatry isn't always the answer, but it can help. It really just depends on how it affects that client's like day-to-day life or functioning, and how they want to address like the eating disorder versus OCD, or if they are combined. So gosh, the best way to move forward with that is actually exposure therapy. It's kind of like the golden standard for anybody with OCD. And so by exposure therapy, or they call it ERP, exposure and response prevention, yep, here we go. Hey, you. Okay. Exposure and response prevention basically means that we're going to expose you to the scenarios that make you the most uncomfortable, so that you can learn to respond to it in a different way, and then prevent that initial like bad habit or behavior. And so if somebody is counting the number of chews it takes before you swallow, we have to interrupt that cycle. So it's funny because if anybody's really, oh my, if anybody has watched The Big Bang Theory and knows who Sheldon Cooper is, he says that you have to chew food like 20 times before swallowing to prevent choking.
Oh.
And so that is definitely some OCD behavior. And basically you have to break it up by like, interrupting that counting. So if you're going to count, then I'm going to try to interrupt that counting. So maybe I'll say different numbers at you, or we'll have a conversation while you're chewing, and basically interrupt that behavior. And what's going to happen is you're going to feel very anxious and uncomfortable. And instead of like learning how to cope with the OCD, we're going to learn to cope with the anxiety around that breaking of habit.
Yeah.
You are so mobile right now. So then you learn to deal with the anxiety. So like breathing through it, or other coping skills like looking at a picture or thinking of a scenery that makes you feel very calm or relaxed. I had a client do specific breathing. So she used to check around her garbage to make sure that her cat wasn't going to get into anything like plastic or bad food or something. And she would check around that garbage for hours at a time. And now because of ERP, she's only doing like a quick, maybe 5-second check. And then she turns away. She still feels uncomfortable through all of this, this ERP work. She still feels uncomfortable, but she turns away and she does, we call it the G breathing. Hello?
Oh.
We call it G breathing because the real name is so long. It's called glossopharyngeal breathing. It's a mouthful. But basically you breathe in as much air as your body or your lungs will allow, and just when you think you can't breathe in any more air, you gulp one last time, and then you exhale all of it. So it's like something like so it's like you're freshly cleaning out everything in your lungs, and it's a very good distraction. And if G breathing doesn't work for you, then there's box breathing, or 4-7-8.
Yeah.
Inhale for 4, hold for 7, exhale for 8, inhale for 4. Yeah. So any way to distract or cope with that anxiety is going to be much easier of a transition than coping with the OCD. Once you kind of give into that OCD, it grows bigger and bigger, and you create this whole monster. And I feel like if you don't abide by what your OCD is telling you to do, then the world's gonna end.
Sure.
So that is the best advice that I could probably give one of your clients, is just learning to rewrite history and deal with that anxiety versus the OCD. Does that answer your question, or were there any parts that I missed?
No, that was really great, because I think a lot of my clients already have exposure with ERP because we do it with the specific foods.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Right? So like if they avoid sweets and sugar, like we're going to introduce sweets and sugar back into your plan here. And work up gradually to the scariest one. Mm-hmm. So you're right. Like, and I think specifically with like calories and other nutrition label things, it's like almost like learning another language. Yeah. Right. Mm-hmm. And so what I tell people is like, if you use this language all the time, you're going to get really good at it, and you're going to remember. It's going to be stuck in your brain, every single number for every single food. Right. even though calories themselves are very arbitrary and they can be up to 20% wrong going either direction, what's on that label. So they're not really worth a whole lot to us anyways, but that doesn't mean that somebody with OCD would really gravitate towards using those numbers to control what they're eating.
So what I'm hearing is it's a good thing that I didn't pay attention in my nutrition class.
Yeah.
Because it's all crap.
Exactly. Health class, meh. You don't need it. No, just kidding. But yeah, then if you if you don't use Spanish anymore or French or whatever you took in high school, like you kind of start to forget, right? If you're not looking at that content or reading or things like that, like the language starts to slip away. And so the same with calories. But I think, for those folks, like they really just need to be able to start and to, like you said, be able to tolerate the distress, the anxiety that's coming up with that. And if they don't know how, if they've never learned any other skills, then no wonder it's so hard.
Yeah. And definitely I would have to suggest that you don't have to go see like an OCD specialist, but just seeing anybody about that version of OCD and like recognizing that it is OCD is a really good place to start. Yeah. Maybe even just getting a second opinion. Like, hey, my dietitian, maybe said that this could be OCD. She recommended I get a, backup or a second opinion. And just seeing what somebody else says. Even a psychiatrist could probably diagnose. I don't know how, psychiatry works all around, but where I work, they have psychiatrists and they take a good I think hour-long session, 45 minutes to an hour the first time that they see you, and every follow-up checkup is 30 minutes, and they totally try to dive in and understand you as the situation has been, and they should be pretty frequent checkups. And I want to acknowledge too, if you don't like somebody's opinion or you don't agree with somebody's opinion, that's okay. You don't have to like your psychiatrist or your dietitian. You don't have to keep seeing them. But if you want answers, if you want consistency, I would get all these different opinions just to maybe shine a light at the situation. If three medical professionals are telling me I have OCD, then maybe I have OCD.
Sure. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. All right, ready for your first one?
So, okay, so my first question is about body image. And so I'm just going to kind of read what I wrote here because otherwise I might not translate it well. But a couple of my male clients said that they have said they don't like the way that they look in particular clothing, or that they think that they look fine, but then see themselves in the mirror or a photo and then start judging their body image. And so they want to work out or change their lifestyle to be more comfortable in their bodies. And I know your background, so what advice would you give them as the anti-diet dietitian here?
Yeah, body image is so tricky because there's a very fine line between what do you like about your body, right, versus what the culture says that our bodies have to look like. And I think it's really obvious when we talk about women, right, and the different body standards and things like that we're held up against compared to what an actual body looks like in real life. But for men it's a little bit different. They still do have ideals though, and a lot of times it's a very built and muscular body, where the muscles are really defined, especially on their chest and their shoulders, maybe in their legs.
Totally.
But they have a slim waist, or they have abs, a six-pack, right, is what we hear about. And so for an everyday male body though, they don't look like that. Yeah. And not everybody has hours and hours to spend in the gym, nor is that really healthy. Yeah. And we see all of these bodybuilder-esque diet plans of eat as much protein as you weigh in body weight, and it's gosh. No, you're gonna blow out your kidneys. Yeah, our bodies don't need and can't handle that much protein, and it doesn't necessarily mean that's how you're gonna build muscle. So yeah, we have all of these standards for bodies for men, and we can see it too. Even I was telling you off camera about the GI Joes.
Oh my gosh, right? I was baffled. Yes.
Yeah. So when the first GI Joes came out, they're they're still sturdy guys, but they look like a normal person. And then like as the years progressed and new GI Joes came out, they became more and more muscular and defined, especially in their chest and their arms, to like what we have now for like kids who dress up for Halloween. You get their costumes for Halloween and they have like sewn in abs, right? And sewn in muscle pads, because that's what a boy should look like.
Yeah, I'm thinking of like Superman, like Clark Kent is like totally what comes to mind when I'm thinking about the standard that all men should look like that, you know?
Yeah.
And it's so false. Like, first and foremost, that guy's a superhero.
Yeah.
So don't get your hopes up. No radiation or uranium.
Right.
But oh my gosh, it's just like impossible. It's not realistic. Like,
yes.
I don't know anybody in person that actually looks like that standard. So
yeah. And so that's like the first thing that we do, right? Is like we try and do a little bit of education that like, hey, just because your body doesn't look like this body doesn't mean it's a bad body.
Yeah.
But like to bring awareness to the fact that like we're struggling with body image, or it's starting to affect other areas of life. Like we're taking time to maybe go try and work out more. And that's taking away from our ability to hang out with family and friends.
Totally.
Or our sleep, because we're like getting up at the crack of dawn to go to the gym or something. Or it's cutting into your finances, because all of a sudden we have to like buy all this protein powder or buy all this other stuff that like we didn't have to do before.
Not to mention that like gym memberships are so expensive.
So expensive. Yeah. Yes. So it's starting to affect your time, your life, your sleep, things like that. And you're just like noticing internally, like it's starting to take up a lot of space in your brain of like the thoughts that are going towards it. It might be time, to start thinking about, is this really what I want to be doing with my life and my time? So we talk about bringing some mindfulness. Once we have some mindfulness and awareness of it, we can stop the checking, right? We call it body checking when we're maybe like pinching or prodding or pulling on certain parts of our body. Stop spending excessive amounts of time in front of the mirror, right? Where we're just like picking apart every little thing or finding all of the negative things that we can see. Pulling up old photos and comparing ourselves, in pictures.
Oh, I feel like that one's so common.
Yeah, it is. And especially for maybe like when you were more athletic in high school or things like that. I feel like people look back at high school photos and are like, oh yeah, I want to get back to my high school body, my 18-year-old
That's
weight.
That's not even like feasible.
Yeah,
like, your metabolism was so high when you were in high school, and
totally.
Yeah.
It's very different. So yeah, bringing awareness, trying to stop the checking, and then if we feel ready for it, trying to bring in some gratefulness towards our body and actually trying to get back into our body. Because so much of this is like we're cut off from the neck up. Like all we're doing is intellectualizing in our brains about what this body should look like, instead of being this body. Right? Like it is not you versus body. It is you and body together.
You only have this one body in this one life, and so why would you waste your time criticizing it? That just seems baffling to me. I mean, our bodies are meant to go through changes. You know, like your body starts deteriorating after age 25. Like you're fully developed in your brain and you stop producing collagen or whatever the heck it is, and you start deteriorating. Like that's the circle of life. And so the sooner that I think you can kind of accept that, like the more you'll appreciate your body. Like I still have 2 legs that I can stand on, and I'm, I'm able-bodied. I'm, able to have a child. Like all these various things, and people focus way too much on the negative, I feel like. But it's so hard to get that perspective across to somebody who has that body dysmorphia.
Yeah. And there's so much money to be made off of people's dislike of their body, right?
So true.
Their unhappiness. It's like, okay, now that you're unhappy and we've showed you what you're supposed to look like, quote unquote, that like, here, you will buy all of the stuff from us and we will be rich, and you will just be stuck in your body dysmorphia, even if your body changes. And poorer. Yes.
Or spending all your money on crap.
Sorry. Yeah. So it's like, there's money to be made off you. You don't have to live your life that way. We can listen to this body who wants to be with us and wants to work with us and be able to follow its cues for what it needs, and really disregard what it looks like.
Totally.
It means the least amount about you, right? It's the least important thing or the least interesting thing about you.
Like there's more things to be worrying about than your body image. I think I was telling you this off camera too, that like there's a DBT term that I still can't remember the name of, but it's kind of like exacerbating the worst or whatever, the negatives over the positives. So it's like I hate my body type or whatever, but at least I'm not, sick with cancer, or at least I don't have smallpox. At least I'm not in the war. Like, I don't know, all these more negatives. And speak on this too, because I had a client who, I had told, like, even if you're being sarcastic about it, like, give yourself props, give yourself credit, give yourself compliments. And he was like, after a while, I started to believe it. I was like, that was the trick. Like, you may not have believed it in the moment, or you may have felt like, hold on. You may have thought that, like, you were being rude to yourself, but in actuality, you're, like, tricking your brain that, like, you're doing better than you thought you were, you know?
It's like a fake it till you make it.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Totally.
So yeah, I wonder if that would work in the same with body image. Just looking at yourself in the mirror and be like, wow, I look so great today. Not really believing it, but eventually once you tell yourself that enough times, you're gonna start believing it. And you might just change your tone of voice. Yeah, absolutely. And there's even, like, there's a lot of research around, like, affirmations too. So even saying them sarcastically, like, it's fine. And, they've shown with kids too, like, of kids that grow up being taught how to say these affirmations to themselves. It doesn't have to be about how they look either. It could be about, that you're smart, that I'm courageous.
Exactly. Yeah. And so they have that better self-talk being programmed in our brain. And if for so long, all it's been up there is negativity and judgment, which we didn't, we're not born with these self-judgments. They are learned from the people that are around us when we're growing up, from society. And so they're ingrained, right? Like, that's the deep trenched path. And so saying an affirmation like, I look great, or I like the way this shirt fits on me, or it doesn't matter how I look, I like this and this and this about myself. That is weird feeling. Right? And the negativity is so ingrained.
Totally. I had a colleague tell me once too, and I haven't fact checked her. So if you say an affirmation in the mirror, you're more likely to believe it, because it's like, when you're talking to me and I'm talking to you, we're not, like, questioning what each other are saying to one another, if that was English. We're just taking it at face value. And when you say if you say an affirmation to yourself, but you're not looking at somebody, you're more likely not to believe it, because it's kind of just like talking to yourself in your head as you're doing things. It doesn't put any, like, reality to it. But if you look at yourself, you're like, that's a person. I'm talking to another person. And so you're more likely to believe that affirmation as you're looking at yourself, which I thought was very interesting. And I tried it, and it felt really weird, but it freaking worked. Wow. I was like, I am not anxious today, or something like that. I can't remember what the affirmation was. But I was like, okay, I see, like, I can feel the difference. Like, I don't know if I was looking for a difference, but I felt one.
Wow.
So that one was interesting.
Oh my gosh.
But yeah, okay, that's really good advice and, like, intel for, like, body image, especially male body image. It's so much more common, I feel like, with females, and there's a lot of talk about body positivity with females, and hyping each other up as, like, a woman collective. But for males, it's, I don't hear men talking to other men like, you look great today, bro. Sure. So maybe we need a little bit more of that in society. If we can start that trend, let's do it.
Yeah. Love it.
Yeah.
Are you ready for your next one?
I think so. Here.
Thanks. Okay. Oh yeah. So this one was asking about trauma, and trauma is, like, a really trippy topic anyways. But my question basically stems around, I have a lot of folks who have significant trauma, and it kind of feels like this chicken and egg situation of, like, I have my eating disorder that is helping with my trauma because I haven't addressed it yet. But I can't address my trauma because my eating disorder is so bad.
Oh gosh.
So it's almost like a question of, how do we parse out, like, which one is the correct one to work on first. And yeah, and like where somebody would be at to be ready to start working on their trauma.
Yeah, okay. That, like you said, is very chicken and egg. Like, which will come first, or which should be addressed first, I should say. And this is the typical answer, but basically it's so dependent on the client and where they are, because that's like the motto for therapy, is just to meet your client where they're at. So if they acknowledge that they have an eating disorder, but they don't acknowledge that they have trauma, then you have to meet them at the level of the eating disorder. So you have, binge eating disorder because, your mom had orthorexia or something and just taught you to eat clean or be skinny or da-da-da. And so you have trauma around the way that you were raised, but you're only addressing that binge eating disorder because that's what's most prominent or outwardly spoken, I guess. And so if the client doesn't recognize that trauma, how can you address it? Totally. You can't just like go up to somebody and be like, you have a problem. Like, nobody believes that. This is a little maybe TMI, but we've told our dad several times, like, you're an alcoholic, and he doesn't believe it. Like, he's like, I'm not an alcoholic, stop telling me he's an alcoholic. But that's how I would diagnose him. That's not how he perceives life, and that's okay. So the same rings true for those with trauma versus eating disorders. Now, if, like you said, this person had a traumatic experience, which is feeding into the eating disorder, they acknowledge the trauma, that might be a good place to start, because when we think about trauma, it's about what happened in the past that has shaped the way that we want to live our life now or even in the future. And so right now you're choosing to live life with this eating disorder because of a previous event that happened, right? So typically, if we can kind of back up and maybe do some like inner child work, address that younger self, then we can fix the eating disorder along the way, and it becomes a lot easier to address. Like, I'm trying to think, this is kind of trauma and OCD combined here.
Wow.
But I had a client who, her aunt's house burned down or something when she was a kiddo, and that's what caused her OCD. And so she'll check under tables and things for wires that are getting too hot, or she hates like baseboard heaters because she thinks that they'll start fires. And so she would spend hours checking those things and making sure that that they weren't going to catch fire or get too hot, and we had to address the trauma first. So there's a reason that you are checking these things for fire hazards, is because you had this traumatic experience. Even though you weren't a part of it, you had like the secondary trauma, or vicarious trauma is what they call it. With the same client, like she, I think I mentioned this earlier, she checks around her garbage can, or she checks like on the floor for various things to make sure that her cat isn't going to get into that, because she had a previous cat who was mischievous and got into everything. And even though he didn't pass from eating garbage, he still passed away, and that was traumatic to her. And so now she wants to make sure that she's giving her second cat like their best life. So again, trauma versus the behavior, and it's totally dependent on where the client is. I was going to add something else in there, but it slipped away. There's that mom brain coming through. Did that answer some of your questions? Did you have another piece to that scenario?
No, I think like the only other thought was like, obviously if the eating disorder is affecting you physically to the point where like it's endangering your life, like obviously I would want to start with like stabilizing some of that. So maybe that's like where my other thought is like, for someone who maybe like has these maladaptive behaviors, whether it be an eating disorder or otherwise, that like they be in like a stable place in life. Like, does that make sense? Of like they're not like actively in the abusive relationship or in the things to like be able to start working on it.
Like the trauma, you mean?
Yeah.
I think that's the other piece I was going to mention is the two various types of trauma. Like PTSD is what we hear constantly, but there's acute and chronic. And so I would say like if that person's in that chronic stage, they... Oh, I thought she was laughing, but she's sobbing. If they're... Oh, really? Did you want to weigh in?
She does.
If a person's in that chronic stage, then they have like those nightmares, or they have continuous thoughts. They're unable to hold stable relationships. Like that is clearly affecting their day-to-day life. And yes, that's where I would start addressing. The acute is like, yeah, it happened to me, but it's not determining like how I want to live my life, or I'm in the trauma right now, it's very little, and it's like my symptoms aren't going to last longer than 3 months or something like that. That's what determines. So if like somebody was in an abusive relationship and then they got this like eating disorder from that relationship, but they're no longer in that relationship but have held up these habits, again, that's kind of where we turn to maybe some ERP, or like you know, your dietitian. Gosh, now I'm lacking the words. The like work groups that you do.
Oh, sure.
You know, if you would agree with that too. But it's totally dependent on the client and if they think that that needs to be addressed. I mean, sometimes people don't recognize that their trauma is trauma. To address the stability piece, I don't think that it's entirely necessary. Like if the client is living, if the client is in a state of trauma or distress, like we can make those adjustments in life as they're happening. Like I had a client who was in a terrible marriage and knew she was in an abusive kind of relationship, wanted to get out, but didn't know how. And we just had to make progress where we could. So she wanted to get a job, but she was so like OCD and traumatized that she didn't want to leave her house. Okay, so what jobs are available to you in the home? With my client, we were trying to figure out, you know, you can work in home if you don't want to, or if you don't have the ability to like leave the home and go get a job or whatever. Yeah. And so we were just focusing on like meeting her where she was at. Again, we couldn't get rid of her husband, right? We couldn't move out. We didn't have the money for all of these other things. And so we're just taking it bit by bit. And she was still like living through the trauma, like not to share too much, you know, HIPAA purposes, but basically she was verbally abused and physically abused and financially abused. And so again, we're just trying to like make these little progresses, and checking some of those boxes off of her to-do list made her feel accomplished. Like she had a purpose and was like making, you know, changes in her life. And eventually that client became no longer a client because she found a great opportunity for herself to move to a different state.
Oh, wow.
And like live with a family who was very similar to her. And you know, I don't know her updates now, but she was so excited when she told me she went and met this other family and thought it was going to be a perfect living scenario. She, you know, was on her way to divorce her husband, you know, gain some stability and independence. And so like I think that those little progresses during her trauma made some confidence when it came to dealing with like this bridge to cross, you know?
Sure.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
So I wouldn't recommend ignoring the trauma in the slightest. So if the person is going through the motions in the trauma, then yeah, you can absolutely address it while they're going through it.
That makes sense. Okay.
Yeah, cool. Great question. Any other bits or pieces to that question? You ready for your second scenario? I
think I'm ready.
Okay. Yeah. So second and last scenario here is ARFID. Okay, before I ask my question, will you let myself and the viewers know maybe what the DSM has, like the qualifications for diagnosing?
Yeah,
ARFID?
Absolutely. So ARFID stands for Avoidant Restrictive Food Intake Disorder, I believe.
Good job. Yeah,
I never remember. I keep it's intake or intolerance. I'm pretty sure it's intake.
I think it's intake. Mm-hmm.
And basically, it's a form of restriction that, you know, is affecting their health or their well-being, but in a way with the food that's it's not based on like weight or their body image. Usually, there's a couple different sections, you know, qualifications. Either they're having issues eating enough because of a sensory thing, maybe like they only can tolerate certain textures or certain smells of foods, and other ones are really turning them off, or they're so worried about a negative reaction to a food, like maybe throwing up, having an allergic reaction, having food poisoning, that they avoid a lot of foods. And so as a result, their food bubble is very small. They only eat, maybe 10 foods or something
That's
like that.
crazy.
And so then as a result, like, not only can they have to stick with their safe foods, but just like anybody who eats the same foods over and over, they're bored
so dead.
of eating those foods.
Gosh.
And so then they don't eat enough.
It's sad when I go to Costco and I buy something in bulk because I really like it, and then like halfway through I'm like, I'm so done with this. Like, I turn to a sister or like somebody, I'm like, do you want this? Or like, take it home, I don't want it anymore. Because I get so satiated of that food. So
yes.
Wow. Okay. Good intro here. Is there like, you said that it doesn't have to do with body image necessarily, but is there other like very specific qualifications besides, the texture or, what was the other one that you just said? Texture or the behavioral consequence.
Adverse consequence.
Yeah. Is there any other conditions that make somebody ARFID versus like binge eating or anorexic? Is there a differentiation?
Those are kind of the big ones.
Okay.
I will say though, like, while that is the DSM's version of ARFID, it's very hard for it not to be about body image sometimes. Like people might be ARFID and sometimes they know from like a very young age of like always being classified as like the picky eater or having a lot of trauma around food being like forced on them. Like you're not going to leave
your plate. Okay.
You're not going to leave the table until you try this food and or eat it all or whatever. And so they may have grown up like being termed this picky eater, but then like diet culture is also part of their life.
Yeah.
And so there also might be like, body image things going on too. Okay. So I don't love that like they have to be so disconnected because I think they can really easily be intertwined.
Okay.
And other foods be restricted too. Like maybe they only have their 10 foods, but it's actually more like 7 because these 3 over here are like unhealthy and I shouldn't eat too much or I'll gain weight kind of thing. Even though I really like those and I could have them.
Okay. I was curious because I feel like there can be, as much as the DSM separates those diagnoses, there can be some overlap, and so that's why I kind of wipe my hands clean of ARFID clients because I get so confused. Okay, but anyways, my question, again, I'm just going to read from it because otherwise I'll ad-lib and embarrass myself. So I had a female client who suspected that she had ARFID because she didn't like eating certain foods or would cycle through foods that she would be comfortable eating or like binge eating. So after discussing her eating habits further in our sessions, we realized she's actually comfortable eating or trying most foods, and that perhaps it's her mother's like orthorexia or healthy eating versus unhealthy eating habits or ideals that have made the client feel shame for eating certain things. So would you, what would be your correction diagnosis if it's not ARFID, and what advice would you have for her?
Sure. And I think like the cycling through different foods doesn't have to be an ARFID thing. I think a lot of us find foods that we really like. We could eat the same thing for breakfast or the same thing for lunch every day until we get bored and we try something new. But I think where I do see it more in my work is that like there is some other kind of adverse consequence or the texture thing that's like, okay, I'm only cycling through these 15 foods or something like that. And I'm not eating enough because all I want is the Cheetos or all I want is applesauce or whatever it is. Because they're not like calorically dense enough to like replace a meal, right? So going through some of those foods is not like the end of the world, as long as there are like maybe other things coming in too to kind of help balance out. And that's part of what a dietitian can do too, is help you find things. But it sounds like if she was open to trying some different foods, and you all made a list of things for her to ERP herself, right? Some food exposures. I'd be curious to see like if there is any anxiety or distress that comes up as she's actually like sitting down in front of that food to try it for the first time. Yeah. Or if she could be relatively chill and just be like, okay, yeah, like I didn't like this, or I did really like this, and now I can kind of cycle it through.
Which I feel like she would be the latter, but without actually going through it with her. I can't say for sure, but I think she did play a lot into textures and like certain foods on the plate couldn't touch other foods, and it sounded a lot more like OCD, which we also suspected because, even eating, the same breakfast every day can be an OCD habit. Not that I think that she had that, but she definitely, like with the Cheetos you mentioned, she just eats whatever she can or wants to eat because she needs to eat or feels hungry. But then she kind of has that shame after the fact because especially if she's like eating with her family, her mom was like, that's not healthy, you should be eating something different. And again, it's like the textures kind of hinder what she can and can't eat. So I don't know, I feel like a lot of those behaviors can be kind of normal. Like even our sister doesn't like yogurt because of the texture. Like people don't like certain foods. Like I wouldn't force anybody to eat broccoli who didn't like broccoli, So, I don't know, it didn't sound like ARFID to me, but I could be, I'm not the professional here. Would you say it sounds more like ARFID than another eating disorder?
It's a good question. I think probably with knowing some of the other things about like the texture and things, it probably could be diagnosed as ARFID.
Okay.
As long as it was, feeling limited enough. But yeah, like I said, having us all drink the same tea that is diet culture, like it's not surprising that she's having guilt and judgment come up about eating certain foods. So it could be that as well of like, well, I guess I can't eat Cheetos even though I really like them because I just don't think that they're healthy, or I'm told they're not healthy.
And I mean, thinking about how like we grew up too, I feel like we grew up in a pretty healthy household, our mom did make foods for us and made sure that we had vegetables and whatever. But like we also had restrictions, like we couldn't always have sodas, or even juice wasn't, in plentiful amounts. And so then when we, got allowances or we started working, that's all we bought was sugar. And so I don't feel like that alludes to ARFID, but it is more like I'll eat what I want when I want because I'll eat it, Okay, well, I hope you enjoyed our client scenarios today. I know I did. Very informational. And if you in the world out there feel like you have a question or scenario that you would like us to weigh in on or give our advice about, like, please leave it in the comments because we would find that really entertaining. And then until next time, thanks for joining us on To the Brim podcast.